Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Disadvantaged Communities Advisory Group's July 17, 2026 meeting. I'm Chris Walker, DACAG Vice Chair. Before we do roll call, just a quick reminder, Senate Bill 554 requires members of the DACAG who are participating remotely to remain visible on camera. If you have challenges with internet connectivity during this meeting, preventing you from being visible to the other members and to the public, you must publicly announce the reason you're off camera as soon as possible. With that, we'll receive a roll call. I'll read the names one by one. Chris, present. Elena.
Present.
Jim.
Present.
Melanie.
Present.
Welcome. Ramon.
Present.
Ryan.
Ryan isn't going to be able to join us today.
Thank you, Zara. Sarah.
He's having technical difficulties, so we'll hopefully be on soon.
Thank you. Sanait. Travis.
Present.
Welcome. Councilman Michael Vasquez.
Present.
Great. With that, with that, we need 6 members from quorum. We do have quorum, and we can move forward and take any voting items we might have. But for item 2, we're gonna let's open up for agency staff reminders and instructions and general public comment.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zara Jamshed. I am DACAG liaison and a senior regulatory analyst at the CPUC. Supporting us today are Eleanor Willman with IT support for CPUC, Dorothy Marini with DACAG support for the CEC. We're joined by legal advisors Vanessa Baldwin from CPUC and Renee Webster Hawkins for CEC, as well as CEC Public Advisor Ryan Young and CPUC Supervisor Cheryl Cox. This meeting is being recorded and is being held both remotely and in person here in San Francisco. Chris will facilitate, take public comment, and conduct roll call votes for items the DACAG is voting on to ensure a clear record. The group may also take public comment for substantive items being presented today. For DACAG members, please note that member absence doesn't exclude you from voting on an item if you have reviewed the material. So for voting items today, we'll have the DACAG meeting minutes from the May 2026 meeting. Another public comment period will occur near the end of the meeting. We've enabled closed captions to make this meeting accessible. Please click the CC icon in the bottom left to turn captions on. To see more options, click the 3 dots in the caption box to see captions and highlights. To stop, press the CC icon again. Please note that the chat is disabled for attendees. Panelists may use it for technical, procedural, or legal questions only. Now, there are 2 ways to provide public comment. The first is written comments via the CEC docket system. Visit the DACAG website on the CEC site, search California Energy Commission DACAG, or use the provided link. Click Submit Comment, and on the comment page, read instructions carefully, provide the required information, enter your comment, or attach a file with a document containing your comment. Click Agree and Submit or Cancel if you change your mind. And then for any questions, please contact the docket team. For comments during the meeting, if you are in person, please raise your hand or use one of the provided QR codes. When called, you could come forward and state your name and affiliation before making any comments. For those online, please use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. And for those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and *6 to mute or unmute. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Now is an opportunity to comment on all DACAG matters, including those on today's agenda. Seeing no comments in the room, we'll look for raised hands on Webex. Seeing no raised hands, I'll pass it back.
Sarah's got her hand.
Oh.
Thank you, Zara. Are we good to move to item 3? Opening remarks by CEC and CPUC leadership. So in this section, we'll acknowledge commissioners joining us today. So we'll welcome you to say hello and give brief remarks if you'd like, starting with the CEC and Commissioner Gallardo.
Hi, Commissioner Gallardo is traveling today and unable to join. My name is Colleen Cordell and I am her advisor. I thank you for allowing me to join on her behalf. She did express her regret for not being able to attend today. She's very happy to welcome new members to DACAG and wanted to extend her congratulations and to welcome you aboard, and also to underscore how valuable this advisory group is, both to the work of CEC and CPUC, but more generally the state. So just again, wanted to relay her gratitude and welcome the new members, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. We are indeed excited to welcome our new members. Do we have Commissioner Skinner on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Commissioner.
Hi. Thank you. Yes, I share Commissioner Gallardo's sentiments. I was really happy that both the PUC and the CEC came together and settled on the new appointments, and our business meeting, the CEC's business meeting, acted on those just, I think it was a week ago. So really happy that new DACAG members are here and participating with us, and I look forward to today's discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have CEC leadership on the line?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Commissioner Houck, I'm here in person in the San Francisco office with folks. I want to also welcome the new DACAG members. We did our approvals yesterday at our voting meeting and are really happy to see the new members participating, excited to get their perspectives. So welcome. I know we've got a number of things that are going to be coming up soon that I just wanted to highlight. I think I've mentioned our disconnections proposed decision is we're anticipating that it's going to be coming out sometime very early next month. I'm hoping, but cannot promise that it'll get published before the public participation hearing, but we are holding a public participation hearing on August 5th. So just wanted to note that. And if DACAG wants an overview of the proposed decision, it's probably something that should go on the next meeting if you want to have time to provide any feedback or comments. So I just want to put that out there that we've also got our climate adaptation proceeding with the community engagement plan proposal that has been released. So we're taking comments on that as well. So I just wanted to highlight that is out there if there's any interest in taking a closer look at that. And we are also hoping to get our tribal OIR proposed decision, looking at our tribal consultation policy and our tribal land transfer policy, also published in the next couple of weeks. So a lot going on, but those things are things I know this group has talked about. So I wanted to highlight those. If there's interest in further discussions, please let us know. So thank you and look forward to the discussion today. And again, welcome all the new members. And welcome Sarah Sharp back as reappointed member.
And actually, Chris, now that Commissioner Darcy has made her those updates, I did realize there is something I could bring the members' attention to that might be, it's definitely within the interest of our DACAG members. And that is that the CEC now has a solicitation called EV Home. And I've discussed that with our Clean Transportation Advisory Program board members. And also I made such an announcement at the commission meeting. But that solicitation is open now. We've just extended, the deadline is in August. We've just extended it by a week. But what that solicitation is focused on is it will fund community-based organizations that apply, so nonprofits that apply. And the funding, what the program specifically is it will only be activities that take place within low-income and disadvantaged communities, those designated. And the purpose of it is for household-to-household outreach to encourage EV acquisition. And then the CEC funding, not only would it fund that outreach, but it would also fund charging if there is appropriate ability to install a charger at the location or to help ensure that there is access to charging very nearby. And I bring it up now, it's specifically or especially relevant because the legislature has now approved and the Air Resources Board has done its work on the governor's proposal, which is, and I got the name at the tip of my tongue, but it is the new incentive program that California, the state of California will offer to first-time EV purchasers, both used and new EVs. But if you couple that with the PUC's recent action, where they've now released, and it is the Center for Sustainable Energy who will administer it, they've now released new financial incentives for a transportation network company driver, so an Uber or Lyft driver, for example. And those incentives are quite generous. It's up to $20,000 something for a new EV and $12,000 something for a used EV, and those can be stacked. So for example, a TNC driver could use the California incentive plus the PUC's incentive, and then depending on their region, there might be additional incentives. So for example, if you are a resident of PG&E territory, there's $1,000, instant rebate for used EVs. So we're quite excited about this program, our program being able to get that word out to households in low-income and disadvantaged communities to take advantage of, whether it's just the state and other local incentives, or if the resident is a TNC driver, all of those incentives that we are optimistic that it will help increase the transition and the ownership of EVs within those communities.
Commissioner, we're excited about EV Home and appreciate you for sharing a little bit about it. And I think from Commissioner Douglas's office, do we have Courtney Vaquero?
Yes. Thank you, Chair Walker, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Courtney Vaquero. I'm the Chief of Staff to Commissioner Douglas with the PUC, and I'm pleased to just make a few brief remarks on her behalf. She does regret that she wasn't able to attend today's meeting, but did want me to convey her continuing appreciation to all of you for your service on the DACAG, and especially to express her congratulations and warm welcome to the new members. So that concludes my very brief remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other leadership from the CPUC or CEC want to provide remarks today?
Hi, Chris. This is Ryan Young, the Public Advisor at the California Energy Commission. I want to start by offering a warm welcome to our new members. Very excited to have you on board and look forward to our future collaboration. I also want to welcome the newest member of the Public Advisors team, the Deputy Public Advisor, Jessica Bonnet, was appointed and is now onboarding onto our team. And she's going to be in part aiding in our support for this body. And she has a background from the Department of Justice, but she's actually a CEC alumni and used to be in our STEP division before law school. So warm welcome to Jessica. Jessica, do you want to come on and just briefly say hello?
Sorry, I was looking for the mute button. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you all for being here, I guess. I'm really excited that I'm going to be able to work with you all, and I hope to meet, one-on-one with different members to kind of just get better understanding. But I'm just really excited to be here, so thank you.
Thank you, Brian, and welcome to our new Deputy Public Advisor. Look forward to working with you. All right, I think that wraps up item 3, unless we have any further remarks from CPUC or CEC leadership. Hearing nothing, item 4 brings us to possible approval of our meeting minutes from our May 15th, 2026 DACAG meeting. So we'll turn to that. But first, we'll see if there's any public comment.
Thank you, Chris. This is to item 4. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and alert you when all comments will become part of the public record. Those in person, please. For those commenting online, please use the raise hand feature that looks. For those on iPhone, press *3 to raise your hand, *6 to mute and unmute. Seeing no comments in the room.
Zara, I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to flag, at least for me, that your audio was a little bit garbled. So there might have been issues with the public hearing your announcement on how to provide comment. We might want to rerun those.
Happy to. This is an opportunity to provide public comments on item 4. Previous comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker and 1 per organization. So alert time is all comments will be part of the public. Please raise your hand. Those online, raise hand feature looks like an open. For those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and *6 to mute. No comments in the room. We'll go to Webex. Seeing none, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Zara. I think your audio was still a little bit troubled there, so we can look into that between now and the next time. You got to jump off mute again. But unless there's any DACAG member discussion about the May 2026 meeting minutes, do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Nope. Member absence doesn't exclude you from voting on this item if you have reviewed the materials.
Move to approve.
Was that Elena?
This is Roman. I'll second.
Thank you, Roman. So let's take a roll call vote. Please say aye if you're in favor, nay if you oppose, or indicate if you abstain. Note, again, absence from the meeting related to the meeting minutes doesn't prevent members from voting on this item if you are able to review the meeting minutes. So we'll start with me. Aye. Elena?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Melanie?
Aye.
Roman?
Aye.
Ryan? And Sarah?
Aye. Sorry, is Ryan Present. I wasn't sure for the minute. Okay.
No, he's not.
I see.
Okay.
Sinai, also absent, I think. Travis, absent, and Councilman Vasquez.
Travis is here. He's
He
in the
abstained.
Yeah.
votes. Yeah.
I heard him. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I did not catch that. So thank you for the correction. So confirming that Travis abstained. Okay, with that, the ayes have it. And the motion passes. 1, 2.
Sorry, that was an aye for Councilman Vasquez, right?
Yeah, that was an aye. Sorry.
Thank you.
One.
7. I think we have 7 ayes.
Or yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 ayes and 1 abstain.
Well, thank you for that. We've approved our May 2026 meeting minutes. And with that, we can turn to item 5, which we are really excited to do new DACAG member introductions. So we'll be welcoming 3 of our new DACAG members, Melanie Peck, Ryan O'Neill, and Travis Gibrael. And Travis, you'll have to correct me if I've mispronounced your name. But we will have one more new member, Jacob Norte, joining us at our August meeting. He was appointed by the CPUC yesterday at their voting meeting and will be able to join us at our August meeting once he's appointed by the CEC at their August business meeting. So I'd like to invite Ryan, Melanie, and Travis to introduce themselves and the communities you represent, and then we'll introduce ourselves to you. But Melanie, can we start with you?
Sure. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, hello, everyone. Some I saw just earlier this morning, so hello again. But hi, everyone. I'm Melanie Peck. I serve as a Chief Program Officer for a statewide sustainability and green building nonprofit. My day-to-day work focuses on transforming our built environment into resilient, equitable spaces and really helping launch and cultivate local workforce pipelines. My background has largely been sort of in the gap between grassroots community work and major public utilities and IOUs. And I've spent the last 25 years doing everything from community building and rebuilding post-climate disaster and designing regional energy efficiency programs with local governments to leading workforce equity initiatives inside a large utility. And for me, this work is all about systemic equity, and I want to make sure our frontline communities aren't further disenfranchised or left behind, but actively centered in this work. My work has taken me all over the state, and I'm looking forward to bringing that lens to this group and to keep protecting the well-being of California's frontline ratepayers. Thank you very much, and I'm just thrilled to be here.
Thank you, Melanie. We're excited to have you. Ryan, can you introduce yourself, please?
Brian unfortunately had a personal emergency and was not able to join this meeting. He will hopefully be able to join us in August.
And do we have Travis?
Yeah.
Hi, Travis.
Yeah, we should do a sound check because it seems like the audio in the room is choppy. Like it cuts people out.
Okay, I think we're actively working on that.
Yes, we are.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Good job. All right, I'll do my best. Hi everybody. My name is Travis Gibrael. I'm a co-director and the research and education organizer with the Reclaim Our Power Utility Justice Campaign. We are a coalition of about 100 organizations across the state that's focused on transforming California's energy system to one that centers the needs of frontline communities, BIPOC folks, wildfire survivors, tribal communities, so on and so forth. My background is I have a master's degree in environmental justice and organizing, and I kind of originally got into the utility space, working with rural electric cooperatives in North Carolina on projects to localize their energy system with solar and storage in ways that benefited Black farmers. I came to California and became a solar contractor. For the last 6 years, I've been a contractor with Sunwork Renewable Energy Project. But then for the last 4 years, I've worked with Reclaim Our Power. And a lot of my excitement for being part of this advisory group is that we do have this large coalition across the state, a lot of stakeholders who are really interested in the topic that we're discussing here. And so I can really play a role as a conduit to bring the discussions that we have in these spaces to our coalition and get feedback kind of from a large number of people and then be able to bring that back. So I'm excited to play that role as a translator and as a go-between. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome, Travis. We're really happy to have you and your experience on the DACAG. So now I'd like to invite current DACAG members to introduce yourselves to our new colleagues, and I can kick us off because I'm already talking. I'm Chris Walker. I use he, him pronouns. I'm Chief Policy and Programs Officer at Grid Alternatives. I've been at Grid Alternatives for coming up on 8 years now and started at Grid helping to lead the SOMA program as one of 4 program administrator organizations on the program. That was 4 jobs ago now, and now I help to lead a cross-functional team of engineers, project developers, program administrators, policy advocates, finance experts, who are really the bureaucrats within Grid that help all the real-world work take place. So I'm really happy to be working across single-family, multi-family, community solar, community-serving, nonprofit solar, clean mobility, including equitable access to EVs and EV charging and all the rest, in partnership with some of the same organizations on this call, fortunately. So welcome everybody to the mix. It's fun here, and we look forward to your expertise being added to our own, sort of like a Borg, but for good. But with that, other members, I invite you to welcome our new members, introduce yourself a little bit, and we'll look forward to building on our intros today with them as we move through today's agenda and all the agendas through our terms together. So who wants to jump in and introduce yourself?
I can go.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hi, Travis and Melanie. I know Travis already. We have worked together a little bit already, but nice to meet you, Melanie. I'm with my day job. I'm with Central California Asthma Collaborative, and my pronouns are she, her, and my title is Deputy Executive Director there. So I'm sure I'll talk more about what CCAC does, but in relation to this work, we are mostly focused on building decarbonization and transportation electrification in disadvantaged communities, and specifically with the populations we serve across Central California and asthmatic families. But we do a lot of other research and other climate equity stuff, so I won't go into it too much. But nice to meet you, and look forward to working together. I'm also currently the secretary, but if anybody, I'm looking for a replacement secretary.
We will be soliciting you all for potential officer roles, but other DACAG members, who else would like to introduce themselves?
Hey there, I'm Elena Krieger. I'm very excited to have you here. I am based out of Oakland. I run the research and policy team at Just Solutions. We're actually a national nonprofit that focuses on advancing equitable and just energy and climate solutions. My background's in engineering. I did my PhD in batteries, and most of my research and work over the past 10 or so years has really focused on how we advance clean energy in a way that realizes equity, affordability, resilience, and other co-benefits in that process. And particularly focusing on energy affordability for the last year or so. Great to see you all. I'll pass it on to just going to call Roman.
Yeah, thanks, Elena. Pleasure to meet you, Melanie and Travis. I'm Roman Partida Lopez, he, him. I am based in San Diego, so as part of the DACAG, I represent communities that are here in the border region. This is where I grew up. I grew up National City, which is maybe 15 minutes south of downtown San Diego, by National. So growing up on both sides of the border. So really bring that perspective, right, of growing up in the border region and having lived on both sides, and the environmental injustices that both we see in California, but then also across the border, right, and the impact that the border has on our communities. As part of my day job, I am the director and senior legal counsel at the Greenlining Institute. We're a racial and economic equity advocacy organization working throughout the state, primarily in the legislative and regulatory space, to advocate on behalf of low-income communities, communities of color, to ensure that we are working to redress the impacts of redlining that low-income communities have felt over the years. And I primarily lead our transportation, energy, and our climate resilience work now here at Greenlining. And so I come to this space really bringing that expertise. We've worked on electrification, on vehicle electrification, both legislation plus incentives over the years, energy affordability as well, and ensuring that, low-income folks have access, are not highly impacted by energy cost, and that they're also not disconnected, right, when things get tough. And more recently, our climate resilience work, and how do we ensure that we are prepping our communities for, the ever-changing climate atmosphere that we have in front of us, right, and that with high heat, with increased heat, and then, with severe storms, right, that we are ensuring that our most vulnerable communities are prepared for that, and we are making the adequate investments and prioritizing those communities, right, when we do have limited resources. So pleasure to have you, and really excited to have new voices as part of DACAG. And I will pass it over to Councilman Vasquez.
I'm Michael Vasquez, Pechanga Tribal Council. I've been on our tribal council the last 10 years. Of course, there's a multitude of things when you're in public service, or tribal service, should I say. So mainly my number one thing was, of course, gaming and policy. But over the last 6 years, I kind of dived into energy. Pechanga does operate a tribal utility, Pechanga Western Electric. So we do have some of the foresight and stuff that we see with communities that are building. And of course, some of the forgotten, with rural and different communities like that, disadvantaged communities, tribal people are still within that realm. Even with the advancements of gaming and different enterprises, there's connectivity issues as well as opportunities for that. And with that, some of these rate changes and things like that. So I think it was on our tribe, we needed a voice to kind of talk about these natural resources as well as cultural resources, protection, advocacy. And that's kind of where I jumped in, and just kind of reminding people that tribal land is all land basically is tribal land, and resources are supposed to be protected, and that's kind of our job when we're here. So, and it's really awesome for you guys to be here, Melanie and Travis. Thank you guys for participating. I've only been on the last 9 months or so, and you guys are really impressive. All the people on DCAG to take the time out of your schedules to advocate for people that aren't able to advocate for themselves. So I do appreciate all your guys' efforts, and I'm really excited to be working with you guys. And let's make something happen and advocate for the people that maybe don't have that voice. So thank you.
I'll go ahead and go. Hi, my name is Jem Montez. My pronouns are she, her. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the DACAG. I'm really excited to have your perspective and your expertise in some of these conversations that we hold here. I am currently the policy analyst and advocate for the People's Collective for Environmental Justice in the Inland Empire, which is comprised of Riverside County and San Bernardino County, so biggest county out here. And I first came here to learn because it's not like a space, we don't do a lot of energy work, but it's something that is critical out here. And we hope to be able to provide like some perspective of what, like how we live out here and the quality of life, as far as being able to manage the climate change emergency that we're going through. And that's about it. I'll pass it to whoever's next.
Thank you, Jim. I believe that rounds out all of our sort of incumbent DACAG members. And if I'm correct about that, I think we're good to move on to item 6, which is community solar and solar customer programs for disadvantaged communities, or DACs. CPUC staff will present an overview of DAC serving solar programs, including Community Renewable Energy program for community solar and the CPUC's recent decision in A.22-05-022. So let's turn to item 6, and for that, I'll welcome Tori Francisco from the CPUC to present this item.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome, Tori.
Hey, hi, Chris. Greetings to DACAG. Thank you very much for having me. This is Tori Francisco.
Hey, Tori.
Yeah.
I hate to interrupt you, but we might be off to a bad start in terms of the audio quality, unless it's just me.
I'm going to use the microphone. Is this any better, Chris?
Keep talking. I think it might be.
Well, okay. Greetings once again. This is Tori Francisco. I'm the supervisor on the customer generation team.
I'm sorry, Tori. It seemed like it was gonna work for a second there, but you faded, unfortunately. Not just low, it's garbled. Thanks for bearing with us,
Yeah, no
folks,
problem,
while we
Chris.
get this session ready.
Chris, how's this sounding? Better?
I think that's better.
Okay. Well, great. Nice to see everybody. My name is Tori Francisco. I'm supervisor on the customer generation team. Here to talk a little bit about community solar, some of our recent decisions, kind of context for community solar, and some of our programs to target disadvantaged communities. So next slide. I'll just start us off real quick with an overview about our progress with California. Give a little bit of insight about the current rulemaking that we have about.
Oh, you're cutting out.
Okay.
Are you guys hearing that?
Like joining.
Yes,
It's like there's some kind of like noise canceling or something. It's like you guys are being considered background noise or something.
Okay.
Yeah, I think maybe somebody not muted, maybe.
Okay, how about now? Can you hear me now?
I think so.
Okay.
It started off strong last time.
All right, well, let's see if we. Oh,
Yeah.
all right. So I won't belabor this because you can all read what the overview is. So maybe we'll move to the next slide. Thank you. So, in California, community solar can take various forms. Well, the definition we like to use is where those who do not have access to rooftop solar can get the benefits of a solar inter-storage system. So this takes the shape in a way where, local governments or universities or renters, multi-family tenants can participate by subscribing to a portion of a solar system and receive bill benefits for participating. And so currently we've got about 1,200 community solar projects, which is about 560 megawatts in operation, serving 180,000 customers. So this includes kind of older programs that aren't operating now. So that would be like the MASH program or the Community Solar Green Tariff program, which we've merged, and then Community Renewable. including in the SOMA Res BCT program. So we'll talk about those as well. How's my audio?
It was mostly good. It broke up for a half a second there when I came off of mute, but I think we caught 90% of it.
Okay, cool. Well, let's move.
If you're speaking now, we can't hear anything.
I don't know. Are you driving slides?
No, Dorothy is. Dorothy, we can go to the next slide.
Sorry, I couldn't hear it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So next slide, please. Thank you. All right. So DACGT, folks are probably familiar with this program. It provides a 20% discount to low-income customers. We've been pretty successful with this program. About 60 megawatts. The program launched in 2018. Pays it off for this to utility builds projects. And we've got about 1,000 customers that are participating in this program. These pictures you can see, we had a recent ribbon cutting in Carson and in Oakland. One of them was on a Prologis warehouse. And this is an ongoing program that's funded out of the public purpose program dollars. Next slide, please. Okay, and then this is the current rulemaking that we have in front of us now. This was launched in 2025 with kind of 4 key tracks. One of them has to do with SOMA and potential modifications to SOMA. The other one has to do with DACAG. Another tariff that I'll get into in a moment called the Res BCT tariff that's for local governments and tribal governments. And then lastly, what I won't be talking about today is kind of some of our rooftop solar tariffs for small multi-jurisdictional utility customers. Next slide, please. And so I'll talk a little bit about SOMA, near and dear program, as I worked with Chris on launching this thing back in 2017. Worked back in 2017 and launched in 2019. I wanted to highlight the decision that just came out earlier this month. So this was a decision that sought to not expand the program to master metered properties and to new construction properties. The focus really being on ensuring that the dollars, the cap and invest dollars would go to existing buildings and to tenants now, and also to ensure that the program's administration was focusing on getting dollars and getting projects built versus on revising and implementing program rules. So next slide, please. And kind of to reiterate that, we've got 2 maps here. One that shows the success of the program so far with our completed projects, which it totals about 942 projects that have been completed or are in flight. With this other map, which is on the SOMA webpage, which has all of the currently eligible buildings. And you can see that there's a big universe of projects of existing buildings that would be that are eligible for this program. And the commission decided we would focus on these properties versus on expanding to new types of building properties. Next slide, please. Okay, and then a little bit about Res BCT. This one is kind of an archaic, or I would say it's kind of a niche tariff. This is limited to local governments, tribal governments, universities, campuses, joint powers authorities, school districts. And it's unique in the sense that it allows a property or a customer to build a solar system in one location and have the bill credits applied to a bill at a different location. So that this is not permissible under NEM or the net billing tariff. It's really unique to these types of customers. This program is in scope in this R25 proceeding. I think our focus is really going to be on how do we utilize the existing capacity that was set by statute? How do we make this program more accessible to those audiences that have been less successful in accessing the tariff? And so our next step is staff is working on a workshop guidance document we're going to send to the utilities. Utilities are going to host a workshop probably next month, maybe September, where we really would like to get stakeholder involvement to help us kind of figure out how can we improve the tariffs administration to use up the remaining capacity. What are the barriers to accessing this tariff beyond outreach and awareness? I mean, those are ones that we're well aware of, is that people don't even know that this exists, that this is an option. And so, you know, how can we improve it? And I think that's kind of the goal of what the workshop will be. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm not going to read this slide or the next one. I think folks are pretty familiar with DACAG. What I did want to highlight in the next slide, though, is that the commission issued rulings last year about some potential modifications to DACAG, removing some older, program design elements, streamlining some reporting, improving reporting, and the commission expects a proposed decision, I would say, in the next few months. I think the slide says Q3 or Q4, but I think it would be probably in the next few months. So just a heads up that PD may be coming down the pike. And then we move to slide 11, or excuse me. Yeah, I don't know if it's slide 11 or not. My numbers are different than what's on there. Yeah, so one more, please. Perfect. Okay, so now into the community solar proceeding, the 822 proceeding that Chris had mentioned. Got to go back to 2022. We had an assembly bill that required the commission to evaluate its community solar tariffs, not Res BCT, not SOMA, but really green tariff, DACGT, community solar green tariff, and the enhanced community renewables component of green tariff. And after an evaluation, consider whether we should adopt a new program. In 2024, they did that. They established the framework, I'd say, for a new program, and then punted on some of the remaining implementation details, knowing that we had some things to iron out. What was established, though, is that the program was designed and the framework was designed so that non-participating customers and non-participating ratepayers would not be subsidizing this program above wholesale prices. And so the program was designed to rely upon external funding. And that external funding was going to be the EPA Solar for All money and some money from the general fund. But in 2025, the rug got pulled out when the federal government terminated the EPA Solar for All grant, and the state funds were rescinded. So next slide, please. So in this decision that just came out last month, the commission addressed the reality of not having the external funding. So it adopted a program and it adopted some program elements, but really relied on future designing the tariff in the program to capture external funds should they become available in the future. So I just want to give a little bit of context here. Our colleague Shelley Leiser from the Public Advocate's Office presented yesterday at a CEC conference a little bit about front of the meter distributed energy resources. And she had some pretty sobering slides about arrearages and costs and rates. And what to me was pretty shocking is that, across electric customers in California, about 20% of customers are in arrears. The average arrear rate is $619. So the commission had to be extremely mindful of burdening non-participants with additional costs for these types of niche projects being pushed in this proceeding. So that was really the pressure the commission was grappling with.
I wouldn't speak.
Okay. Well, I would say that this is the context the commission is working with as as it was contemplating using ratepayer funds. I can move to the next one. Next slide, please. And then lastly, what the decision did is, let's see. Lastly, what we did is, clarified that DACAG was no longer going to be funded out of the IOU's greenhouse gas auction proceeds due to SB 1207 or the AB 1207. And instead, it's going to be fully funded out of rates. It required the utilities to modify their green tariff programs, kind of to reduce some of the oversight. And then it also moved a lot of the program reporting from these static, like PDF-based quarterly reports to, we're now going to migrate this to the California Distributed Generation Statistics website. So try to, democratize the data for these programs. And then lastly, my last slide just has to do with this webinar that's coming up on Monday. So you heard me talk about this lack of external funds for this community renewable energy program. So on Monday, we're working with Evergreen Economics to pitch an idea and kind of garner some stakeholder feedback about an idea. And this would be a design where in the new construction world where new homes have to have, per the energy code, they have to have on-site solar, a paradigm in which instead of installing the solar on the individual home, there would be some sort of in lieu of payments that could go towards funding a community solar project or the CRE program. And then having that new construction be tied to the CRE tariff. There's a lot to be built here. This isn't a baked idea. And I think it'd be very important to get the DACAG and stakeholder feedback about the concepts. And so anyway, the details are about that webinar are here. So with that, I open it up for any questions. I'm joined by my colleagues here who worked on the programs, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Tori, before we have DACAG member discussion, Zara, can we turn it over to you for public comments?
Yes, thank you, Chris. This is an opportunity to provide comments on item 6, community solar and solar customer program. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please raise your hand so we can call on you. For those online, use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and *6 to mute and unmute. For those in person, please raise your hand. Seeing no comments in the room, we'll turn to Webex. I see we have a raised hand. Megan Phelps, you should be able to unmute and give your comment.
Hi, not a comment, actually a question. I'm with San Diego Community Power. Just wondering if the slides will be posted for that presentation.
Yes, they will. On the
great.
DACAG docket.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see any other raised hands, so I'll pass it back.
Thank you, Zara. Now we'll turn to DACAG members for discussion. Before we do, though, for transparency, I'd like to disclose that my employer, Grid Alternatives, is the program administrator for SOMA, actually one of 4 program administrator organizations, and we are the sole program administrator for DACSASH. So My comments on this topic are broad policy statements and not intended to influence the CPUC's decision on specific funding decision or intended to influence the development of a contract during the early stages of a contracting process. So with that disclaimer shared, DACAG members, what sort of questions and comments do we have for Tori?
I just raised my hand, but I don't know if it showed up. So, okay, if I jump in?
Yes, please.
Tori, thank you for your presentation. I was wondering when you were talking about the community solar program getting compensated at wholesale rates, whether there is or could be an opportunity for resource adequacy to be one additional layer of funding that could be provided to these programs. I'm thinking, for example, maybe you could have a community solar system that was coupled with some energy storage. You're in a load pocket. We know that there's significant resource constraints in some of our urban areas. Is there a way to add additional funding if community solar projects can meet some capacity value in addition to sort of just wholesale energy prices? Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I may ask Josh and or Dan to chime in. Just they're better situated to answer than I am. Thanks.
Thanks. And to clarify, I mean also participation in like the DSGS program or something like that as well.
I'm happy to jump in and, oh, Dan, if you want to go.
No, go ahead, Tor. Go ahead, Josh. Give it a shot, please.
Hi, everyone. Josh Litwin. I'm a senior analyst on Tori's team with Energy Division. These projects under the CRE program would be, they are part of the base tariff is part of REMAT, which includes 3 categories. If there's storage included, it would be the as peaking category that would hopefully get at the RA piece. I'm happy to provide more information, but Dan, why don't you jump in?
Hi, everyone. Happy to add here. I think the first answer to your question is the one that Josh gave, which is that the REMAT program, at least in theory, includes both energy and capacity. So there's some amount of RA value already incorporated. But my understanding is there's some question about whether that's an appropriate set of values, but just at the conceptual level, it does include the capacity. So there's already RA, just not much. Let's see, DSGS. I'd have to think about that some more. It's an unusual fit, DSGS, the kinds of resources that it usually procures, but I have to think it has several options. Now I want to take the question that I think where you were headed in terms of a load pocket, and could there be additional value from like locating a generator? So I think theoretically the answer is yes, absolutely, right? There is distribution capacity value, and to capture it operationally, you do need to locate some amount of a resource generation or some other way of load flexibility, et cetera, in the right place where you have the constraint. However, now the harder part, we don't have a very good framework for procurement of those attributes. There are some proceedings at the CPUC that are sort of geared towards that. I would point towards the high DER proceeding. We have the assigned commissioner here today. That's one place where that is getting worked on. I think if you want to talk about this particular community solar, the CRE and the proceeding that went with it, there were not very robust proposals for how to capture that value reliably and consistently and cost effectively. I think that's a framework that we have been working on for a while. And frankly, it's a tough nut to crack. I don't know that we've fully cracked it. And again, I don't want to overstep because the assigned commissioner, who probably knows more about that than anyone else, is in the room. But that would be my response to your questions.
Thank you for that. One of the places where this came up recently was looking at the CAISO LCR analysis that was actually suggesting that a bunch of the energy storage, particularly in the East and West LA basin, I think, was lacking in basin opportunities to recharge in like contingency scenarios. And so there may be a distinct value to having community solar that could help support both existing and new storage in those areas. But I just don't know if there's any mechanism to, realize that. Thank you.
I think that's really interesting. Can I just add one thing? That is the kind of thing where we would, if we could reliably and consistently and quickly come up with solutions that locating some amount of, say, in front of meter generation and storage would make sense. I'll just note that the community solar part of it, depending on how it's administered, can make that process more cumbersome. So if we were to do that with, let's say, a variety of a community solar resource, you need an enrollment mechanism, frankly, that is efficient. And this is all in the realm of the hypothetical. We do not yet have a fully operational option that would do something like that. And I think we have a few steps to go before we would really be able to do that reliably.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah?
Thanks. I'm not sure if you can see my raised hand because it's not like showing up on my thing anymore. I don't know. Anyways, thank you. Hi, Tori, and everybody else. Nice to see you, and I'm happy to hear this report. I missed the slide that you, maybe it didn't show and then you kind of skipped it, the one before the AB 2316 slide that had like the numbers for DAC GT and everything. I think you said it out loud, but something was happening here.
Yeah.
Is it possible to show it again? I don't know if it's possible, but I did have a question that I think maybe would benefit some of the other members and also remind me because I can't remember. How are customers enrolled in programs like DAC GT? Or I know how DAC SASH works because that's different, but
the slide on DAC GT, it doesn't really get into it. It just talks about that we've got about 40,000 customers on the program. And so, Sarah, if I understand it correctly, that we use auto enrollment for DAC GT. So the commission adopted a prioritization set of criteria for customers. Piloted by PG&E, and I think it's been adopted by all the DAC GT administrators, where like customers that are in the highest need because they're in arrears or because of bill payment behaviors, those are the ones that have been auto-enrolled.
Okay, that's perfect. That's what I was hoping, because I remember that being a logical idea. So I'm glad that that's still happening. That was my main question, and yeah, that's it. So are there opportunities for others who are not auto-enrolled to join the program, or not? Is there an opt-in option as well, or?
Probably not, because there's so many people that meet this criteria that the program was expanded. So I don't know if I have the details on that, but back in the D24 decision, we merged the community solar green tariff with DAC GT. And so we increased the amount of capacity for DAC GT. But my gut just tells me there are so many people in arrears. 20% of the state is in arrears.
Yeah.
That there's not going to be an opportunity to self-enroll. Customers can always opt out. So if they decide they don't want to take that, but if they don't want to, they could opt out, and then the next person in the line would be able to participate. Yeah.
Thank you. One other thing that just came to mind, which is not exactly related, but I'm just going to say it because it came to my mind, is this maybe not considered community solar, but when there are large solar farms being installed. I know there's a lot of interest from the nearby communities in getting access to or benefits from that solar. And I don't know if that actually would count as community solar, but I know people have been discussing at the CEC and other places what kind of community benefits agreements could exist. But I just yesterday was out visiting Cantua Creek, and I know that's something they're very interested in because they're going to get 139,000 acres of solar sited right next to them. And they, still pay. The ones who didn't participate in the San Joaquin Valley pilot, may not already be benefiting from solar in any way. So just wanted to put that out there as an idea. That's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Other members? Elena?
Just to support sort of Sarah's comment there, and I think I heard an interesting model maybe from Spain. Again, this is secondhand, but I was suggesting that you could provide a carrot, something like accelerating permitting or interconnection for projects that, in their case, provide community co-ownership, but it could be co-ownership, but it could be community solar. Some distinct, well-defined community benefit like that would be one way to help achieve that.
Corey, I was wondering within the CRE funding study whether the state is considering zonal decarb as a potential funding source.
That's a good question. That's a good question. I don't think we had considered that. The Evergreen study is really looking at this in lieu of payment option. So it's kind of similar to how low income, if you're building a new construction project and the local authority has 20% of the units have to be low income, you could design and build a project that's 100% market rate, but fund you use the money, you basically fund the affordable housing aspect to have it built somewhere else. But Chris, that wasn't identified as a funding source, but that might be something we can bring to the Evergreen group.
Thank you, Tori. I want to tread carefully in my remarks in general, just given grid is implied in at least two of those scopes of work there. But I'm curious, when we were talking about auto enrollment, whether the commission has considered further expanding auto enrollment, given that we see something like 460,000 disconnections every year, and 40% of those 40% of those households are already on Carafera. Is there additional headroom to auto enroll folks into those programs? I'm still a little bit fuzzy on the status.
Into DAC GT. I'm sorry, Chris.
Yeah.
I think the way it works is that, and Josh can probably communicate it better than I can. There's like a wait list for DAC GT, and that wait list is going to be filled by auto enrolled customers. So unless the program's capacity grows exponentially to address, it's never going to meet the full need.
Is there development happening now under DAG GT? This is a blind spot of mine, so perhaps my basic questions are also helpful for other members.
There are. So I think there's 19 projects that are contracted right now, that are like in development, and then the CCAs and the utilities host RFOs for future solicitations for these projects, I think on an annual basis. But Josh, you probably have those details better than I do.
Yeah, that's right, Tori. So there's about 100 megawatts of the available 233 megawatt capacity cap for the DACAG program that are contracted for. And so that remaining 130 is going out for procurement. It's distributed amongst the 13, there's 2 utility and 11 CCA program administrators. But there is this option that most of these administrators have opted into, which is to use for those projects not yet procured and constructed, to use interim RPS solar capacity to begin serving customers in between. So that's how 40,000 customers, almost most of that 230 megawatt capacity in the interim is already serving customers. So Chris, there is kind of almost fully subscribed number of customers based on auto enrollment throughout those 13 program administrators, and also including the San Joaquin pilot communities as well that are also auto enrolled. I think it's 8 communities in PG&E's territory. So yeah, just more, the eligible universe of customers is much larger than the program can serve, unfortunately.
This is just a really basic question, but when the money gets allocated, it goes out for contract. Who ends up owning the systems once they've been created, installed?
So for DAC-GT, they're third-party owned. So like you'll have probably a limited liability corporation that owns the generation facility. It's not owned by PG&E or Marin Clean Energy or something. It's owned by a group. That tends to be the design.
How are they selected?
Well, the solicitations go out. I mean, Josh could probably explain it better than I can, but solicitations go out, says like, bring me a project that meets these criteria. Got a developer linked with a financier. They build a paper project. They identify the land. They have agreements. They bring that in with a pricing. Generally in DAC-GT, they do a least cost best fit. So they'll pick the best project with the best value. There's I think a project review group, PRG, that includes like someone from CalPA scrutinize the bids. It's like a select group of people to scrutinize the bids, make sure that the utility or the I think the CCA is made to operate differently, but at least the utilities, that the bid that's being picked is actually the best bid. So it's a procurement process that they've used for like a long time to buy energy.
Okay. And so it uses public purpose dollars to fund the whole thing or a part of it?
Historically, it was funded partially out of the cap and invest dollars, like the utilities, IOU, GHG funds. Now it's all fully funded out of the public purpose.
Okay. And it translates to, I suppose, like some amount of profit for the developer and then bill credits for those who get funded.
Yes. Yep.
And Tori, one more kind of generic one from me, but how's the commission thinking about sort of the functioning of these important programs when we have the wind down of the ITC staring at us? So we're now past the point for safe harboring, and only projects built through the end of next year will qualify for the solar ITC, but we get the storage ITC for years longer. So are current generation programs set up to be kind of responsive to the moment we're looking at on the federal side?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I mean, the challenge that we have, I mean, with SOMA, at least there's an opportunity, the incentives are set at the proceeding level, right? So like, we have an open proceeding. So there's an opportunity to revisit if the incentives aren't enough. The Same could be said for DAC-SASH a little bit. But I don't know, it's going to be challenging. I mean, the one thing that we haven't seen in California has been, and these programs are unique, right? Because they're not market rate programs. We don't expect the same efficiency out of them, cost efficiencies. But it'll be interesting to see for like SOMA in particular, how projects are going to get financed, what type of unique financing developers are going to do to meet this new reality. Are there going to be more just host-owned customer, host-owned, projects? I'm just not sure.
Thanks for that, Tori. And what would you say are the biggest issues across this set of solar customer programs that the DACAG ought to be focused on?
That's a great question. I mean, I think that the challenge that we have is, the programs have a limited lifespan. They have a sunset date. So how do we ensure that we, in an orderly manner, meet the program goals and then, sunset the programs? I mean, the challenge that we had historically with like MASH was a kind of disorderly wind down. And that was that created some problems. And so just how do we do this in a way that's orderly? And part of that is like, how do you land the plane? You've launched it. How do you land it safely?
Thanks, Tori. Maybe one last call for DACAG member questions or comments. We'll keep our agenda moving for today. Okay, hearing nothing, I want to thank you, Tori, for presenting today about these important programs. I think the DACAG will be keen to follow their progress and see what challenges they run into, but sounds like we have some threads around which we could engage for in the future. Such as funding sources for some of the programs. Okay, well, next up is item 7. Are we good to keep rolling, or do folks need a brief break? We're going to roll. Okay, so item 7 is Transmission Permitting and California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA review. CPUC staff will present an overview of the electrical transmission permitting and CEQA review process, including tribal consultation and community engagement. So I'll welcome presenters Tommy Alexander from the CPUC to present this item. Welcome, Tommy.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Great. So thanks for the introduction, and thank you for having me here today. My name is Tommy Alexander, and I'm a senior regulatory analyst here in the CPUC Energy Division, specifically working on environmental review and permitting for electric transmission infrastructure. So I'm here today to talk about the CPUC's processes for electrical transmission permitting and for environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. We can go next slide. So before we discuss the permitting processes, I want to zoom out and talk about where these projects come from. So we're talking about electrical transmission infrastructure that makes up the state's electrical grid, bringing power from generation sources and battery storage all over the state to customers, including folks' homes and businesses. So starting at the top of the slide, the California Air Resources Board, or CARB, manages statewide greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets with a goal of net zero emissions by 2045. And that includes specific reduction targets for the electricity sector. The CARB also regulates air quality throughout the state. That informs the California Energy Commission's long-term energy demand forecast in the Integrated Energy Policy Report, or IPER process, which in turn informs the CPUC's resource adequacy planning and integrated resource planning processes. So in the integrated resource planning process, the Commission develops a preferred system plan to achieve the state's greenhouse emissions reduction goals at least cost while maintaining service reliability. And that preferred system plan from the IRP process and the CEC demand forecast in turn feed into the California Independent System Operator, or CAISO's, transmission planning process. And in the transmission planning process, the CAISO identifies transmission enhancements throughout the state that are needed to interconnect new generation and storage and also meet growing electricity demand. And a lot of the projects that come to us at the CPUC in the form of a permit application or advice letter come out of that transmission planning process. Although there are also some projects that are utility self-originated that don't go through that same process. Some of those, I'll note, are also competitively bid, and can answer questions about that if it comes up. So that's kind of where these projects come from. And then I'll talk about what we see here in the CEQA unit at the CPUC. We can go next slide. Thank you. So there are some photographs on this slide showing what we're really talking about when we talk about the different categories of infrastructure here. So the CPUC regulates construction for electrical infrastructure proposed by electric public utilities in the state of California. So that's the three major investor-owned utilities like PG&E, SoCal Edison, San Diego Gas and Electric, but also independent transmission developers like Alice Power Grid, Horizon West Transmission, Viridon, California. These are the general categories of electrical infrastructure that are covered by our permitting rules. So starting at the left, there is distribution infrastructure. These are the power line, or I shouldn't say power lines, but these are the poles and wires that bring power to folks' homes and smaller businesses. The CPUC defines distribution infrastructure as under 50 kilovolts in capacity. Moving to the right, see a typical power line. The CPUC defines these as between 50 and 200 kilovolts. And then on the bottom right, see a transmission line, which is a high voltage transmission line, which the CPUC defines as above 200 kilovolts. And these are the kind of backbone, like the highways of electricity, so to speak, that bring electricity over larger distances across the state. And then in the top right, see a photo of a substation. The CPUC also regulates construction for substations and switching stations, which step up or down the voltage from transmission to power line to distribution, often in connection with the battery storage or generation facility as well. This is what we're talking about when we talk about CPUC electric transmission permitting, and specifically the three photos on the right. Distribution lines are not subject to CPUC discretionary permitting. So we can go next slide. There are several types of authorizations applicable to that infrastructure that we showed on the last slide. That's all set forth in the CPUC's General Order, or GO 131E. So those are our rules for permitting and notice of electrical transmission infrastructure projects proposed by public utilities. So first category, the Commission issues permits for some types of new electrical infrastructure projects. There are two types of permits set forth in GO 131E. There's a Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, or CPCN permit, and a Permit to Construct, or PTC permit. In either case, this is the Commission's decision of whether or not to issue the permit is a discretionary action, which triggers environmental review under CEQA. We'll talk about that on a later slide. The big difference is the CPCN permit includes an evaluation of project cost and need. And the Commission needs to set a maximum prudent and reasonable cost for the project as part of any decision to approve it. The PTC process does not include that cost evaluation, but it's still a permit, still a discretionary action. There are also some projects which do not qualify for CPCN or PTC permit, but do require a notice of construction. I'll talk more about that on a later slide, but those notices are provided via what we call advice letters. And finally, under Public Utilities Code, Section 851, the Commission must review transactions by a public utility for transferring or encumbering their property. So that can include public utility-owned facilities or land, for instance, sharing electrical towers or right-of-way with telecom equipment, or transferring land or equipment from one utility to another. There's a $5 million threshold. If it's above $5 million, the transaction is subject to an application under Section 851. If it's below $5 million, it's subject to disposition by an advice letter. And finally, I'll just note that there are some exempt projects that don't require CPUC permits or advice letters. Those are mostly projects that are either distribution infrastructure under 50 kV or projects that are already exempt from CEQA pursuant to either a statutory exemption or a categorical exemption. Next slide. So when we receive a permit application from an electric public utility, whether it's a CPCN or a PTC, that triggers two parallel processes that lead to the Commission's review, that serve as the vehicle for the Commission's review. So first, there's a formal legal application proceeding, which is assigned to a commissioner as well as an administrative law judge. And in that, the Commission considers various issues that may come up, including environmental issues and the cost and need for the project. And that proceeding leads ultimately to the approval or denial of the permit application at a publicly noticed CPUC voting meeting. The other process, sort of a parallel track, is environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. And that also includes tribal consultation pursuant to Assembly Bill, or AB 52. So these two processes do proceed in parallel. They may there are certain mandated timelines applicable to both the legal proceeding and the CEQA process. And so while they start at the same time, some parts may move forward and some parts may pause, but they end up at the same place. Ultimately, the Commission's decision on the permit is typically the Commission's decision of whether to certify or adopt the CEQA document that's prepared under CEQA. So members of the public can participate in the CEQA process, and they can also become a party to the formal legal proceeding. It's either or both, and we try to make those accessible to any interested and effective stakeholders. So as part of the CEQA review, the Commission prepares a big report looking at all the potential environmental impacts of the project and addresses 20 resource areas, which have the potential to affect a number of resources and communities. That includes, this is just a short list, not the full 20, but that includes air quality and greenhouse gas emissions, biological resources, cultural and tribal cultural resources, hydrology and water quality, hazards and hazardous materials, noise, transportation, wildfire, and others. It just gives you a sense of the breadth of what we look at under CEQA. And then one last thing I'll note on this slide. So this is our formal process. There is a pre-filing consultation process that occurs. So typically the applicant is required to come to the CPUC and share draft versions of its application materials before it files a permit application. And there's a process that typically begins about a year before the permit application, which doesn't obviate anything that happens in the formal CPUC CEQA process or legal proceeding, but is kind of the beginning of the application process. We can go next slide. So I mentioned those 20 environmental resource areas that the CPUC looks at under CEQA. One of those is tribal cultural resources. And a key way that we get information about potentially affected tribal cultural resources is through tribal consultation under AB 52. So AB 52 requires public agencies under CEQA, when preparing a CEQA document, to consult with tribes about the potential impacts to tribal cultural resources as part of that CEQA review process. At any time, regardless of whether there's an active CEQA review or proceeding, any tribe in California can submit a written request to the CPUC to be added to our master list to be notified of tribes within their geographic area. So typically we have a list of all the tribes that have requested notification listed by the counties in which they have indicated interest. And then we make sure to reach out to them when a project comes up in those counties. So the formal, and again, this doesn't mean that we can't talk to tribes, and we often do, when possible, talk to tribes before this formal process. But the formal AB 52 process is that within 14 days of deeming a permit application complete, we receive a permit application, we have a 30-day window to identify deficiencies and deem it complete. And then ultimately, if we deem it complete, the proceeding and CEQA review start. So within 14 days of deeming the application complete, CPUC CEQA staff are required to notify tribes with the project description and location. And we notify any of the tribes that have requested notification, but that doesn't limit the tribes that we noted necessarily. Within 30 days of that, tribes can respond to the notification and request consultation on the project. And then after that, the CPUC is required to initiate consultation with those tribes that request consultation. Tribal consultation is typically ongoing throughout the CEQA process and involves meetings between CPUC, CEQA staff, and tribes providing information about their ancestral territories and known tribal cultural resources in the area. You can go next slide. So I mentioned on a prior slide, there are some projects which don't require permits from the CPUC, but are nonetheless subject to some oversight. So there's a category of projects described in our GO 131E permitting rules, mostly minor upgrades, modifications, replacements of existing infrastructure. These projects aren't subject to a permit, but the utility does need to file a notice of construction via what we call a Tier 2 advice letter. So that's a letter that is filed with the CPUC tariff unit by the utility. There's a 30-day period for us to either respond, file a disposition letter, or suspend the advice letter if we need to take more time to review. These are approved at the staff level. It's a delegated authority. And there's a 20-day public protest period where the public can protest the advice letter. Because this is approved at the staff level, it's not a discretionary action taken by the commission. So this doesn't trigger environmental review under CEQA or tribal consultation under AB 52. But tribes and other affected stakeholders, members of the public, can protest those advice letters during the 20-day period and can file comments. So certainly there are still opportunities for participation. Next slide. So those are our permitting processes for electrical transmission projects. I do want to highlight, just as folks may be tracking active projects, there have been some recent changes to the Commission's electric transmission permitting rules. So those are set forth in our, again, General Order or GO 131E. That was adopted on January 30th, 2025, and it replaced our old electric transmission permitting rules. Our older transmission permitting rules were set forth in GO 131E, which had been in effect since 1994 for about 30 years. I won't get into too much detail here, but some of the biggest changes from the D version to the E version that you might see are, one, the commission allowed applicants to submit a draft version of a CEQA document with their permit application. So for a CPCN or PTC permit application, and that's in lieu of a document that had been the historical standard. It's called a Proponent's Environmental Assessment, or PEA. In either case, this is just a different application format. It doesn't change anything that the CPUC is required to do under CEQA or AB 52 or any other statute or policy. So in either case, even though it's called a draft version of a CEQA document and it might look like an EIR, ultimately the CPUC as the lead agency has to use its independent judgment in preparing a CEQA document that it circulates to the public. We still have to conduct scoping, again, tribal consultation, everything else that we're required to do under CEQA. But there is a different application format that you'll see. Another change that the commission made was requiring early pre-filing consultation for applicants. So applicants are required now to notify the CPUC 12 months prior to filing a permit application for an electric transmission project, and to initiate what we call pre-filing consultation at least 6 months prior to filing. And that involves reviewing back and forth their draft application materials and consulting with staff on the potential completeness of the application. They're also required, I'll say applicants are also required to consult with governments, local governments and tribal governments, local, state and federal governments and tribal governments that may be stakeholders in the project, consult with them on their route, and then demonstrate to us in their application that they've done that consultation. A couple other changes the commission made from GO 131D to E. The commission clarified the applicability of some exemptions from permitting for certain types of grid upgrades and interconnections. This all came from a bill called SB 529, which was enacted in 2022. The commission clarified and updated its application and reporting requirements, building on some of what was already in the general order, but consolidating and clarifying things. And the commission also directed staff to initiate a new pilot program to track various performance metrics for electric transmission permitting projects and identify both lessons learned and ongoing process improvements for transmission permitting. Next slide. So kind of highlighted this on a few of the prior slides, but want to just bring together here. There are a number of ways for members of the public to participate in CPUC proceedings and CEQA review. And I know for the new DACAG members, there are also some specific mechanisms for DACAG members to file comments in proceedings, but the slide's really aimed at members of the public more broadly. So members of the public can participate in the CEQA process by visiting the CPUC CEQA webpage. We have a link here. You can track our current transmission projects undergoing environmental review. You can request to be added to the CEQA mailing list for a particular project. And again, we hold public scoping meetings and we receive public comments on all of our projects that are subject to permitting. Incorporate those and address them in the environmental document. Members of the public can also participate in the formal application proceedings. So there's a link here. You can Google or visit this link to access the CPUC proceeding information search webpage. And this is a great way to find information about the status of a formal application proceeding. You can be added to the service list and participate in the formal proceeding process, providing comments on the commission's proposed decision, becoming a party, showing up to pre-hearing conferences. There are a number of ways to get involved. And this last link on the page, I do recommend contacting the CPUC Public Advisor's Office. They exist to help folks participate in our proceedings, and it's a great way to plug in and understand your options. And then finally, for tribes specifically, just want to highlight there are also a number of tribe-specific ways to engage. So tribes can and do participate in tribal consultation under AB 52. Tribes can become a party to the proceeding. And we also have an overall CPUC tribal consultation policy where the CPUC strives to include, to facilitate tribal participation in all of its programs and proceedings. And you can go next slide. Sorry?
Just add one thing on.
Oh, sure. Addition for Commissioner Howard.
Yeah, just I wanted to add on the tribal participation, the formal party in the proceeding. Our current draft policy has some more detail in it, but what we have been doing, and it is formalized in the draft policy, is if the tribe, for whatever reason, doesn't choose to become a formal party, they can send formal correspondence to the commission from the tribal government. And the administrative law judge assigned to that proceeding will docket that information into the proceeding. and upon the tribe's request, so that that information can become part of the formal record for consideration by the commission.
Thank you, Commissioner. So that's my presentation on transmission permitting and environmental review at the CPUC, and would love to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Tommy Alexander, and thank you for the additions, Commissioner Houck. Before we take DACAG member discussion, I want to turn it over to Zara to take any public comments.
Thank you, Chris. This is an opportunity to provide public comments on item 7, transmission permitting and CEQA review. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please raise your hand so we can call on you. For those online, please use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and press *6 to mute and unmute. For those in person, please raise your hand. Seeing no one in the room, I will see if there are any raised hands. Seeing no raised hands, I'll pass it back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Zara. Thank you again, Tommy. This was instructional for me. I don't work in ways that make me have to know about CEQA, so I appreciated the high-level education here, but I'm curious what DACAG members have here for discussion. So I'd like to turn it over to members for questions and comments regarding this item. Councilman Vasquez.
Hi, thank you. We were just asking about somewhat similar to this as far as some of the transmission planning and processes. And thank Ms. Commissioner Houck for kind of speaking about some of these proposed rulemaking decisions as far as consultation goes. My question is kind of, I just want some clarity on sequence for tribal consultation and how you go about that. And also, you did mention that you guys have or created a contact list. And how do you formulate that? Is it part of some other state group? I know there's a lot of different areas where you can get contact lists with federally recognized tribes and or tribal groups. So I just want to hear the distinction between that.
Sure, happy to answer that. So the master list that I referred to is specifically tribes that have requested notification in future notification of future projects under AB 52. But we also do look at tribes, both tribal trust lands and reservations, and also the ancestral territory of tribes when we're determining who to contact. And part of that happens often in the developer will reach out to the Native American Heritage Commission, and agencies can also reach out to the Native American Heritage Commission, which can advise on tribes that may have an interest in a particular project. So there are different ways of compiling a list, but ultimately we have a list of tribes that have requested notification. And then you asked about the sequencing of tribal consultation. So the formal AB 52 tribal consultation process begins after an application is filed and then determined to be complete by the commission. And then within 14 days of determining that application complete, we're required to reach out to tribes that have requested notification and offer consultation with them. And then tribes have 30 days to respond, letting us know that they'd like consultation. And then after that, we have to get to consult with all the tribes that would like to consult with us. And then that's kind of the formal process, but that doesn't in any way preclude meetings between CPUC staff and tribes prior to the filing of a formal application or prior to deeming that complete.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, advance notice would be appropriate, but of course, until it's approved and within CEQA and SB 52, my tribe has been instrumental in creating that in 2014. So we're definitely listening and hearing and making comments. And there is some reaffirmation for this CEQA process as well. So it's kind of going through that. So I do have some more questions, of course, with some transmission stuff kind of going down, and I look forward to kind of hearing what the commission deems is appropriate for their consultation draft that they're working on right now. I think they were saying August. I know Ms. Houck just stepped out. I was trying to catch her before she walked out of the room, but I don't know if staff can kind of see where we are within the process with that, or can I ask that of the staff?
I may be able to answer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, in her opening remarks, Commissioner Houck said that the proposed decision for the tribal OIR, where everything is an estimate, but they're estimating that that proposed decision would be ready in a few weeks.
Okay. And I know she was making that statement just so we had ample time if it was able to be on the DACAG list, right? For us to make comments, or I thought that's what she was saying, potentially.
If the DACAG would like to have a comment letter commenting on the tribal OIR includes the updated tribal consultation policy as well as the tribal land transfer policy.
Yeah.
So yeah, if the DACAG wants to write a comment letter on either of those things, that's definitely something that the body is able to do.
Thank you. I know within the land transfer thing there were some questions as well, but I'll kind of try to formulate those for everyone as well. So, but thank you for the presentation today. I think it is appropriate. Of course, we do hold those things near and dear to us as far as those cultural resources and protections that we have in place, but we've been fighting for. So definitely appreciate it and look for more dialogue.
Thank you, Councilman. One from me, Tommy. Can we get a little bit more info on the 20 areas you mentioned were reviewed by the commissioners? You started to name a few, but didn't provide the exhaustive list. I'm curious whether there's public material on how the commissioners make their considerations across those 20 items, and whether that leaves some sort of public record once we have the actual CEQA determination at sort of the level of those 20 criteria areas, or whatever they might be called. I'm curious about that element myself.
Absolutely. So that is all part of the public process, and a lot of what the purpose of the CEQA process is to study and elicit input from the public on all of those environmental resource areas. And those are public. I'm happy to read out a list, but there are 20, and
yeah, I'm happy
I can read through that. But if you look up CEQA resource areas, that it's all out there. But I can talk a little about how the commission considers that. So the commission, when studying a project pursuant to CEQA, prepares a CEQA document, and depending on whether there are potentially significant impacts to any resource, there are different categories of CEQA document. You might have heard the term environmental impact report, or EIR, or initial study mitigating negative declaration, or ISM&D. But in any case, the commission has to document the potential impacts to all of those resource areas and prescribe mitigation measures to avoid or mitigate the potentially significant impacts to those resources. And that's all laid out and described in our CEQA document. We describe what's the environmental baseline, what are the potential impacts, what are potential ways to mitigate those potentially significant impacts. And then if there are potentially significant impacts and the commission prepares an EIR, the commission, before approving the project and certifying the EIR, needs to adopt impact findings, which go through and make formal legal findings on all of those impacts. So it's a very public process, and that's all documented in the CEQA document. And then the commission, in its decision on a project, would go through and consider and adopt the findings. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Thank you, Tommy. And thanks, Zara, for providing resources in the chat. Sarah?
Thank you. This was really helpful. I think this is exactly what the kind of presentation we were hoping for. So I appreciate the work to make it happen. I was wondering on the like less formal site, I guess, where you were talking about advice letters. I don't remember if you could remind us how the public can know about advice letters when they're filed, because I don't know if we would be subscribed to some list or how we would know about it, or we would just have to constantly be searching for them. Yeah.
So those are made public on the utilities websites, and there's I believe you just sent to a list of folks that are identified to potentially have interest in the advice letter. I need to get back to you on exactly how that's determined, but they are posted publicly, and then there's a public protest period.
So there's no like listserv, or it's not like a docket or like a proceeding would have a listserv where you could just sign up and you know that. But if they're doing a minor change, they would just file an advice letter. Somebody would have to notice it on their website if you're not on their list.
I believe so, and I would need to get back to you to make sure that I'm giving you fully accurate information. But I know, like the utility, I believe, like local governments, there are some entities that end up being noticed of advice letters, but I'm not 100% certain of the sort of how that list is determined. But I do want to stress that those are typically smaller projects. It's like maybe reconductoring a power line or replacing poles on an existing power line. Not like the new greenfield transmission that is subject to a permit.
Yes, thank you.
Jim?
Thank you. Thank you, Tommy, for the presentation. I'm wondering, you're saying that you post everything 14 days in advance, so people have 14 days notice to review that. Is there any process so that you can have advance notice of it? For example, maybe when they notify you within that 12 months or the 6 months, when they sign up or file for that pre-consultation. And the reason is in the work I do, I'm the only policy person, and to be able to make my way through a CEQA document, be able to look at the analysis and use some relative comments within that period of time is not realistic for me to think that I could do that. And so I can imagine where you get to other communities that don't have groups that support them, or even tribal entities that are under-resourced, how it would be hard for them to give meaningful comments for these projects. So is there some way that they can get notified ahead of time, for that 14 days?
So I want to be clear, the 14 days is the required timeline for staff to reach out to tribes, and then tribes have 30 days after that to respond and determine if they want consultation. But that's just what's required by statute. Ultimately, it's a human process. The point of this is to make sure that folks are heard and engaged in the process. So if a tribe reaches out to us 31 days after that and it's like, hey, sorry, we missed this, and 31 days is just an example, of course, but reaches out to us and says, hey, we want to be included in consultation, we're not going to, certainly like as a project manager for some of these, I wouldn't slam the door. And and I think there's a human process. It's there's kind of what's required, but then there is this ongoing consultation. But that's really just to say yes, we'd like to consult on a project, and then consultation is a much longer process. So there's that first response of like, yes, we're interested, let's talk, and then it's not 14 days or 30 days. It's usually years where we're meeting with the tribe and eliciting input from you all, from a tribe on the potential impacts to tribal cultural resources. So that is a pretty expansive process.
So it's basically around cultural resources, or does it involve like the other impacts, such as air quality impacts and things like that?
So tribes can certainly, the AB 52 statutory requirement is for government agencies to consult with tribal governments when reviewing one of these projects, when reviewing a project pursuant to CEQA. So I think that the focus of that is often on tribal cultural resources, but I don't think that precludes discussion of other resources, and tribes are certainly able to participate in the broader public review process and provide comments on any of the other potential environmental impacts.
Could I just say that I think we kind of package all those things together when we do make our comments as far as some of our natural resource protection and cultural resource protection, and we do have our environmental department, and a lot of other tribes do as well, to kind of hone in on some of these concerns. So I would just let you know that.
Then I just have one more question. Are thresholds like lowered in areas, in regard to impacts? Are the thresholds lowered for areas that are identified as disadvantaged communities?
I think that's certainly something that would be taken into consideration. We look at what's the environmental baseline in an area, and it really depends on the specific project and where it's being proposed, and what's already out there. What's the environment that would stand to be affected by a proposed project? But that's certainly the kind of thing that gets taken into account when determining what the environmental baseline is and whether the impacts would be significant.
Yeah, because I know like in where I'm at in the Inland Empire, we have so many communities that are in non-attainment that it's, any impacts to us really can be devastating. So it'd be great to have like different thresholds when we're evaluating these kind of things. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just about tribal consultation. My question is just like how much teeth does tribal opposition have in the process? Like if a tribe says no, we don't want this, is that generally respected, or is it like, okay, how can we work with you to make it acceptable to you? Or is it like, you don't like it, I'm sorry, we considered that, but we're still going to approve it?
I guess it just depends on the impact. I would speak for myself right here, but it depends on the impact of the project, and of course, I don't know. We've won some of those things, and we've lost some of those things. It just depends on what that is, and that's why a lot of tribes are reluctant to share a lot of cultural, natural resources, history, and/or things like that. So there is something that comes with that. So I can't say we win all the time, but tribes tend to hold strong on most of the things that we want to protect. So mixed bag.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate that feedback. I'm curious from the PUC perspective, if you're the one who's engaging with the tribe, like how do you consider that internally?
I mean, the goal of the process is to engage in good faith with the tribes and identify tribes' concerns about a potential project. Like Councilman Vasquez says, that doesn't need to be limited to tribal cultural resources, but the goal that we go into it with is to really listen and understand. I think there are a few parts to it. One is, you can't always know what the impacts are going to be and this I think is especially true of things like cultural and tribal cultural resources, but can apply to all the resource areas. Sometimes you really need to go talk to people and talk to the folks in the affected communities to understand what the impacts are. So I think we're first going into these conversations seeking to listen and understand. And then if there are potentially significant impacts identified, then we would seek to engage in a constructive conversation with the tribe and understand, are there measures that could mitigate or avoid those impacts? And we would document all of that as part of the process.
Thank you for that question. Jim, do you have another question or comment? All right. Do we have further member discussion, questions, comments? Well, Tommy, I want to thank you for being a part of our capacity building. We requested sessions like these to help build capacity for when we need to consider specific projects coming through the pipeline. So this hopefully gives us a baseline level of knowledge to be able to do that. And we appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate you all.
All right, with that, we are at item 8, which is a break. So we're going to take a short break. 5 minutes from now, let's come back. We'll round up to 10 after. So at 3:10, we'll be back here together and resume our agenda.
My apologies. We're now back to recording. Say what you just said again, please.
Welcome back. Thanks for rejoining, folks. We're going to resume our agenda with item 9 on our priority areas. So through our priority areas, DACAG members can provide updates and announcements regarding DACAG priority areas and associated activities. And members may discuss and revise items related to the 2026 priority areas, including the identification of subject matter experts. So given that we have new members, I think we'll be keen to receive your interest in participating in a couple of these 5, and they are electric service, access, rates and disconnections, electricity generation, transmission and distribution, transmission electrification and zero emission mobility, building and industrial, decarbonization, clean fuels, and long-term planning. So would members like to choose their priority areas today?
Chris,
Elena?
before folks jump in, can you remind us what we agreed upon as the cross-cutting themes between these priority areas?
Yes. Let's see. I don't know if we have
me pull it
that
up.
slide on hand. Thank you. I think that'll be helpful. Okay. While we're doing that, do any members have any priority area updates?
Jen, Chris, and I had an SME meeting, but I admittedly could only attend half of it. So I'm going to volunteer Chris or Jem to perhaps give the full update.
Thank you, Elena. I'm pulling up some notes on that. That feels like it was a while ago. We missed our last regular monthly meeting, so feels like we're reaching back in time for this priority area update.
I believe it was appliance standards for HVAC. To ensure that new systems would be able to shift demand from peak times to times of lower cost and lower times of greenhouse gas emissions.
Thanks for jogging my memory on that, Elena. So it sounds like new thermostats will be rolling out, and folks won't really have to do much about it since it'll come down to where repair folks and folks installing systems are procuring their hardware, and all new hardware will need to eventually be compliant. It sounds like that's expected to raise cost by somewhere around $12 per unit, but potentially pay some of that back in terms of savings.
My recollection was that the payback time was on the order of like 1 year or so, like a very quick payback. So.
Okay. Meanwhile, thanks to staff for bringing up our priority areas. We've done some recent work on our priority areas, and you may see topics of interest to you missing from them. And that's because the DACAG decided to take our equity framework and apply all of its areas as cross-cutting to our priority areas themselves. So, for example, we want to consider tribal nations across all 5 of our new priority areas, as do we want to consider non-energy benefits, affordability, access, workforce development, so on and so forth. So thank you, Elena, for asking this question as a way of illuminating like what our cross-cutting areas are, in case some of those aspects, at least in the titles of our priority areas, appeared to be missing. But if we can keep scrolling from here, now that we know that we want to consider all 10 of those things across all of our priority areas, these are the areas themselves once again. So if members don't feel, new members don't feel sure about which SME group you might want to join, which priority area you might be most interested in, we can hold this until the next meeting when we'll have our final new member added to the crew, and we can do it then if you need additional time to consider. But given the interest in keeping our priority area groups pretty lean, and so that we're not breaking any rules, we want to have folks pretty well distributed across. So if you're sure now, there might be some advantage in locking in your choices if you feel decisive. If not, we can keep the agenda rolling.
Chris, I got a quick question. Can you just say a little bit about what long-term planning? Oh, I see it on the. Actually, I see it right there. That's what it consists of. Okay.
Yep. SB 100. So state climate planning and barriers related to an equitable transition. IPER scenarios. So the Integrated Energy Planning Report Series, offshore wind, Lithium Valley Vision, long-term gas system planning, and smart grids and broadband infrastructure.
It looks like Melanie has her hand raised.
I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand, Melanie.
That's okay. I didn't want to interrupt. Do you mind scrolling back up to 1? I'm interested in the electric service access rates and disconnections, and then also building an industrial decarb. But I think what I saw before was there were quite a few on the decarb group. Is there?
I think it says we can have up to 5 members on each one, so we have space on all of them. I believe we left space for you all, and if we need to, some of us can step down. But, yeah.
Yes, and I think we have particular interest in having new members be a part of that one, given that some of our existing members may be conflicted from participating in relevant discussions.
Got it. Got it. Well, I would love to be a part of electric service access rates and disconnections. And then what is the official for the decarb? What was it called? Building and industrial decarbonization and clean fuels.
Thank you, Melanie. Come on in. The water's fine.
I'm going to just dive right in.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think I would be interested in joining electric service access rates and disconnections and electricity generation, transmission, and distribution.
Also solid choices. Well, thank you. We'll look forward to having your participation in those priority area engagements. Do we have further member updates for priority areas? All right.
Before moving to the next item, if the DACAG is considering any comment letters that they would want to have by the next meeting, this would be the talk about that.
Okay, so returning to the notes, Councilman Vasquez, it wasn't clear to me.
Yeah, I was
saw-
debating whether or not the comment letter would be appropriate. So I think they kind of included everything. I just want to. I'll have to just look at the presentation. As of right now, I don't think it would deem it a comment letter from this group.
Okay.
Can I just jump in here? And if there are still notes that you would like to check, we could vote to say that if you deem it necessary, you can write one and not hold you to that once you've had a chance to look at the presentation.
Yeah, I want to make sure that I'm not missing anything, especially within the presentation that they submitted. I think the one was the A51 transfer tribe thing. I think that was maybe the one area I didn't get a lot of dialogue on. So of course I got to do my research. How would we just kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to use the earmark word, but would we just like approve potentially having a letter once I kind of formulate that and I could kind of get in contact with everyone? What say you?
I was going to say, Vanessa, do you want to weigh in here?
Yeah, sure. So, necessarily the letter itself, before it officially goes out as, this is the position of the DACAG, and gets, filed in our proceeding or sent along to the appropriate decision makers for consideration, that process would need to take place at a DACAG meeting.
Okay.
And so I wasn't quite clear about timing, but if the timing was to have something ready before the next DACAG meeting, we would need to do it now and vote on it. And, kind of somebody would pull up a Word document, we would type in it and finalize a letter today. If the idea is to draft a letter and then have it finalized at the next DACAG meeting, that is a possibility too. I just wasn't clear on the timing.
Yeah, I think what Commissioner Hulk was saying earlier, I think there was something that we were going to talk about. I would propose it could probably be included in that conversation, which we haven't had yet, for the consultation draft that she's going to, I think they're talking about submitting. It was at the beginning of the meeting. I don't know if you guys recall what she was.
Are you referring to the proposed decision that we're expecting to come out for the tribal OIR?
Yes.
So, yeah, that.
Because we haven't really heard it yet. We heard.
Yeah, it hasn't been released yet. And so that's what we're waiting to be released.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that the DACAG couldn't submit a letter to the proceeding. But yeah, it sounded like the PD is expected in a week and is not out yet.
Well, without kind of delaying this, I would hold off until that is presented.
Thank
So
you, Councilman.
I'll save the work right now, but thank you guys.
Yeah, that makes sense to me as the logical next place to jump into that process. Appreciate the discussion there. And I hadn't fully considered personally whether any of Tori's presentation implied the need for a DACAG comment letter, and there were also considerations for me there. So I'm not clear that we would have one emerging from that other session in the short term either. So I think we can move forward for now. Okay.
Can you guys remind me which priority area the SME meeting you were talking about thermostats fit into?
I was guessing building an industrial decarb.
I think so.
How did I didn't get invited to that one, I don't think.
Maybe it was electricity generation, transmission, and distribution. I'm not sure.
I don't know, maybe, or maybe I just missed the email. It's possible either way.
I don't think it was the building and industrial decarbonization because I'm not on there and I got the invite. So.
Yeah, it might have been, maybe it was electricity generation, transmission, and distribution because maybe it was an RA or, not RA, sorry. What do they call that? Demand response?
Demand response.
It's a demand response issue, which maybe fits into that category.
The email says building an industrial decarb, but it is the wrong grouping of people, so I'm not really sure what happened there.
Okay.
Okay, happy to dig into that a little bit more in agenda setting.
I'm just trying to figure out what to put in the notes. Sorry. Building and I'll just put in building and industrial decarbonization.
Okay. I think we're good to move on to the Low Income Oversight Board update, item number 10. If nothing else on this item, or Elena, I'm sorry, did you have your hand up for this item?
We have CPUC LIOB liaison Jen Gordon here, who was going to give a brief overview of the last LIOB meeting.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Zara. Yes, as Zara said, I am Jen Gordon. I'm the Low Income Oversight Board Liaison. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I begin, I have a shameless plug. The Low Income Oversight Board is currently recruiting for a public member. We have a vacancy. So if you or someone you may know might be interested and or qualified, I'll place the solicitation flyer in the chat. The application deadline is at the end of July, and we encourage interested individuals to apply and help support the board's work on issues affecting California's low-income utility customers. So let me put that in the chat. Okay. With that, I would like to provide a brief factual recap of an informational presentation that was provided to the Low Income Oversight Board during our June meeting. Now, I want to highlight that this is it was item 5, and this item, what I'm presenting to you guys today is intended solely as a high-level recap of the presentation and subsequent board discussion. It is not an Energy Division analysis, recommendation, or a commission position regarding plug-in solar. And furthermore, since I'm going to be summarizing someone else's presentation, I'm not going to be able to provide the level of detail that was covered during the presentation or respond to specific questions. However, the slide deck from the presentation has been provided to Zara for your review, and I can also provide at the end of my presentation a link to where you can go to the LIOB website and review it yourself. So this slide, so the presentation was delivered by Ben Paulus of the Clean Energy States Alliance, and it focused on plug-in solar technology and potential opportunities associated with the technology. The presentation discussed the characteristics of plug-in solar systems, current market development in the United States and Europe, and safety considerations, regulatory issues, customer economics, and recent legislative activity. Next slide. Thank you. So following the presentation, board members asked several informational questions, and the topics included whether plug-in solar has been incorporated into energy assistance programs in other states, which customer groups may benefit most from the technology, the role of battery storage, safety considerations, and how customer bill savings might be relevant. And in response to the board members' questions, Mr. Paulus discussed topics including customer economics, battery storage, export compensation, and safety considerations associated with plug-in solar systems. So I will go ahead and leave the link to the LIOB website for the full presentation that Mr. Paulus gave, if you are interested in reviewing that. And then next slide, please. I open it up to any questions that I may answer.
Thank you, Jen. I think your disclaimer was heard loud and clear that you'd be limited in your ability to answer questions from the LIO presenter, and we're not, sort of taking positions from the presentation. So we appreciate that.
Chris, do we need to take public comment on this?
It doesn't appear from my run of show, but Zara, please correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, it's in my minutes document, but I don't know if we do.
I don't think we do, no.
Thank you, Jen. I do not have a question. Do other members have questions? Melanie?
It's a legacy hand.
Sarah, also a legacy hand or a new hand?
I don't have a question. I more have a comment because I did attend part of the LIOB meeting this time, and I found it very interesting and relevant to all the, it's very, very almost exactly the same scope of what we do, seemed like. So it was interesting the way that they have their meetings organized, and specifically the thing that I really liked and appreciated and wondered if we should consider doing, although I recognize it might be a little different because the LIOB is only a body that advises the CPUC, so they only have one agency involved. But they did have a report from the Government Affairs Office. I forget what it's called exactly, but they had a legislative report on all legislation that was relevant to their scope from the PUC, and I thought that was really interesting. So I don't know if there's some, I know that we've in the past talked about getting these kinds of reports, so I don't know if we could just have it brought over. I mean, I guess it changes every day. Things in the legislature change, so if they were to create one for the LIOB and then bring it to us, it might have changed by then. But I liked that part of the meeting, and I didn't get to stay for the whole meeting, but that's my comment. But like, if any of you get a chance to go to an LIOB meeting, it might be a good experience.
Thanks for that report out, Sarah. Roman? You're muted for us, Roman.
You know what? I unraised my hand instead of pressing the unmute button. Sorry about that. Yeah, thanks, Jen, for the presentation. Not a specific question on what you shared with us, more just a general comment. Really appreciate the LIOB coming on the DACAG meeting and presenting, because I was the LIOB liaison, quote unquote, right, for these last few years now, I would say, and it's always been really difficult, right, to try to make the meetings, even though, they're on a quarterly basis, but they are day-long meetings, and at times, it's hard to make those times. So just really appreciate the PUC making leaning into this and delivering on this commitment, right, to bring updates from what's happening at the LIOB. Just one thing I wanted to share, especially with the new members, right, is that there are some overlapping priorities, right, and why I think there's this opportunity to have a presentation or, right, like updates from what's happening with the LIOB. In the past, I think one of the things that we attempted to do was to kind of better align, especially when it came to our priorities. And I went, when I was chair at one point, right, and presented to the LIOB on what our priorities were for the year. And then, they shared theirs, and the attempt was to kind of try to align, especially when it came time to submit comments on a particular proceeding or a docket, right? That's a lot more difficult, but at least creating that awareness, right, of what we were seeing, or what we were submitting comments on. And so I just want to flag that, right, as something that, not to add more stuff to our plate, right, and especially your plate, Chris, but something that, we've attempted and I don't think been super successful at, but something to consider, right, as we are getting kind of like already into the second half of the year, and we have our new priorities, we have new members, and so, figuring out if there are ways to try to align more closely with them and share out. So just adding that piece. But then to Sarah's comment really quick on the legislative update, I think that would be really helpful. I mean, I think just getting some type of update on like what type of legislation is out there that's impacting our priority areas, I think would be really helpful, especially right now as we head into the the last month, basically, right, of the legislative session, right? And it'd be just good to kind of hear what has been flagged for staff, right? That, could be flagged for us as well, that could impact, our priority areas moving forward. So yeah, thanks for the time.
Yeah, I really appreciate and like all of those suggestions, Ramon and Sarah both, and we'll look forward to digging into some of the opportunities there with staff in our agenda setting meeting. I'll also just note as a programming note for new members, I'm acting chair right now. I was elected as vice chair, but eventually we'll get to a place where we're asking you to consider whether you would like to raise your hand for an officer position, and there would be a vote. But agenda setting meetings are where we have additional space with agency staff to talk about how we can align the DACAG agenda and meetings to do what we all hope we can do here, which is make meaningful difference for folks in DACs and tribal communities. And sounds like there's a lot to learn from our friends on the LIOB side. Personally, I'm really excited about plug-in and balcony solar. So also a topic that keen for us to dig in on. And yeah, your update has been really generative, Jen. So thank you again for bringing it to us. We'll look forward to engaging again more in the future.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, I think we arrive at item 11, agency announcements. So this is an opportunity for CEC and CPUC leadership and staff to provide any agency announcements they might have. So we'll start with CEC.
Thank you, Chris. Actually, if we could move to CPUC and then I'll come back.
Sure, happy to kick things off. Zara Jamshed, they, them, CPUC, DACAG liaison. We have a few announcements for the DACAG this month. First, in the climate adaptation proceeding, the CPUC released a ruling on July 10th for the climate adaptation proceeding, including a staff proposal from Energy Division's Climate and Equity Initiative Scheme, guidance on community engagement and adaptive capacity. This staff proposal is in response to the Commissioner's Phase 2 scoping memo related to IOU climate adaptation vulnerability assessments, or CAVAs. The recommendations are informed by 5 workshops that staff held from 2024 to 2025, which featured dozens of community-based organizations in order to incorporate feedback from disadvantaged and vulnerable communities and ensure their unique vulnerabilities are captured in CAVA data. The proposal includes a new community engagement framework cycle, DVC public advisory groups, a tribal advisory component, coordination with local governments, other state agencies, and across CPUC proceeding. It includes improved community engagement evaluation and 8 community adaptive capacity criteria. So Energy Division staff appreciate any feedback on the proposal, especially from DACAG members and other representatives of DVCs. Moving on to the climate credit, the rulemaking looking at improvements to the climate credit. This is R25-07-013, is having a workshop on August 11th. The workshop will discuss the assigned commissioner proposal detailed in the June 29th guidance ruling. It'll review available data and address data questions, provide a forum for parties to vet potential proposal concepts for a return of the residential climate credit, discuss proposal requirements, and gather public input. We're still awaiting details on time and location of the workshop, but all of those details will be provided to members once they are available. Moving on to the Peck program, CPUC's electric research and development program. DACAG in April, at their April meeting, provided input on the IOU's community engagement plans for cycle 5 of the EPIC program. And now those community engagement plans have been submitted to the CPUC. They'll inform our review of the EPIC investment plans, EPIC 5 investment plans, which are due to the CPUC by August 26th. We will be sending the plans to all members in case you would like to review further. And wanted to reiterate what Jen said about the Low Income Oversight Board seeking a new public member through the end of July. And that is all I have from CPUC.
Hey, Zara, back over to you, Dorothy.
Thank you so much. So one event I wanted to highlight was there's a workshop upcoming for the Draft California Building Energy Performance Strategies report. So this report includes draft building performance strategy recommendations for using building benchmarking data to manage building energy use and greenhouse gas emissions to support California's equity, energy, and environmental goals. The report is being developed pursuant to Public Resources Code 25402.16, added by Senate Bill 48. The draft report will be published was already published on the 6th of this month, and the draft building energy performance strategy report workshop will be on the 29th. That'll be from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Staff will share the recommendations, solicit feedback, and outline the timeline for final report development and future community engagement. So I'll be sharing the link to this event amongst others So just wanted to highlight that for folks. Also, we'll be compiling some funding opportunities that we have as an agency to be sending to you to be able to share with your networks. So we do that, staff does do that on a regular basis. So we just want to continue that effort. So you could be able to share with your networks and see how these opportunities may apply to your communities. And that is it for now. Or that is it for now, yeah. Thanks.
Thank you for those updates. Moving to item 12, agenda setting and attendance. I'd like to take this opportunity to see if there are topics DACAG members would like to propose for future DACAG meetings. If you have a time frame of when you would like the topic to be discussed, please share that as well. I will note that we've been working with staff to refine sort of a log of topics that members have flagged interest in over time, and we want to make sure that agenda items fall in as relevant place in our annual agenda meeting set as possible. So we're also working with staff to understand, similar on the LIOB side, what a schedule of relevant proceedings, program changes, et cetera, might be throughout the course, or large planning reports such as the IPER might be throughout the course of the year, so that we can sort of intervene at opportune moments and have time for meaningful engagement. So with that in mind, we would like to collect any topics from DACAG members. Melanie?
Just quick clarification. Did you say there's a list that we can already refer to just to see if there are the subject matter that's already been proposed? Don't want to unintentionally duplicate.
I don't want to speak for staff. Are we able to share that list?
Apologies, were you speaking about the priority list?
No, I'm sorry. The list of potential agenda topics for future meetings.
Oh, okay. 1 second. The only thing that I heard, I think Commissioner Hauk mentioned that we could request an update on, I think it was on the disconnections, but there's going to be a workshop. So I don't know if we wanted to request that, but sorry, hold on. Sorry, buddy, just a minute. So yeah, it's up to us if we want to request it or if we're going to just go to the workshop.
I say we add that for now, and we can discuss it with staff about whether the workshop is a better idea. I did see a Cal Matters update that was relevant, that the heat threshold got lowered to 90 degrees. So that's positive and something that DACAG advocated for. So I just want to share that report out with folks. Roman?
Yes, Dorothy looks for that list. Just one thing, I mentioned the climate credit earlier, and so there is a workshop happening, as was referenced, on the 11th. So maybe a big opportunity to provide an update as to where that's at, or any just any updates, especially since the workshop is happening right before our meeting on the 17th, I think, or something like that, 21st. So just flagging that. And then the other piece, just a more broad comment around our upcoming meetings. I know there was some requests to try to meet in person, right, for this one. And I'm just curious whether y'all have put any thought into any upcoming like in-person meetings, just so that, we can start trying to plan for that. So I also remember there was that other bill, right, that ended, that allowed for us to continue to meet in person. I think that doesn't impact us anymore, but yeah, just curious, like what the thought is on like in-person meetings, and so.
Thank you for that, Roman. We are tentatively asking members to try to anticipate being in person for the October meeting. We have designs around a climate equity field day, being able to go out and see some of the projects that relevant programs incentivize or fund, going out and seeing workforce development happening around some of the state's programming across energy, transportation, et cetera. So that is very early stages, and we want to co-create that with members. So please look forward to some more engagement around that. Meanwhile, Dorothy, thank you for sharing that list of requested agenda items.
Ramon, just to the issue of like if I can't remember the bill exactly, but the requirements of whether these types of meetings needed to go back to just being fully in person. So that legislation has been updated. And so I think through 2030, the status quo of being able to have hybrid meetings is going to continue. That being said, of course, we as agencies are certainly very interested in having more in-person meetings, and particularly bringing in communities to those meetings. So we're happy to support as much as we're able in bringing folks together in person, since there is budget for DACAG members' travel expenses to be reimbursed.
Thanks for that update, Zara.
I did offer, I would like to organize a visit or a meeting down here, maybe in Bakersfield, sometime, I guess maybe after October. I don't think we want to do September, and August definitely not. So maybe for the end of the year, November or something, and we could do a visit of hopefully like an EBD home or some other.
Sounds cooler then. Sounds
like
way
that.
cooler than in Bakersfield. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely not like 110. We did a site visit with some funders yesterday. It was 110. We were out in the oil fields like melting.
If I could just chime in about topics, it's possible that you've already discussed it earlier in the year. Obviously, this is my first meeting. But I know within our coalition, there's quite a few disability justice organizations that have a particular interest in the DDAR, which is the Disability Disaster Access and Resources Program. That was recently cut by the PUC. And so I know that they have been doing a fair amount of organizing on that. And so if that's not a topic that we have discussed, then would like to propose that for, to be discussed at some point.
Other ideas? Melanie, is seeing this helpful?
Super helpful.
Maybe staff can also circulate this. I'm not sure.
Yeah, this is really, and these have not been covered yet. These are just on deck for future conversations. Okay. Just plus wanting to quite a few of them.
One of the line 22 we did today. So
there's
yes.
Not really interested in the data center regulations and the wildfire rates conversations and wildfire impacts.
Yeah, I was wondering. We'll check on when we have our agenda setting meeting to see what the timing is for when we can get a data center presentation.
Mhm.
Actually, let me, I'm going to scroll through the list, but as I scroll through, just a quick question for Elena. If for SB 100, do you want to follow up on that, or did we, at least for now, capture that with a previous presentation? For non-energy impacts.
Sorry, was that a question for me? For some reason, I got kicked out of the meeting for a second.
Oh, no, it was in regards to non-energy impacts or non-energy benefits. If the previous presentation by staff covered the ask, the previous ask, or if you wanted to expound on it further or have us come back, then we can connect further and, get details on, for SB 100, sorry, yeah. If that was captured, or since we're going through this list real quick.
I see.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think non-energy impacts were actually captured in SB 100, but I think the presentation was provided. I think that there's a non-energy impact informational proceeding that has been going through the CEC, and I can't remember the status of that. That might have just completed, but I think that would be the sort of next follow-up would be on that. I believe a report was just released.
Indeed. All right, we'll follow up on that.
Okay. Well, in the interest of time, I want to collect any of our members' final burning ideas for now. We'll do this each meeting, and then if you decide to come in officer and are elected, you can join us in each month, the Tuesday after the DACAG meeting. We have our agenda setting meeting.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Not seeing any further hands. I think we're good to move to item number 13, public comment, and try to wrap as close to on time as possible.
Thank you, Chris. This is the final opportunity to provide comments on any matters related to the DACAG or today's agenda, including informational items. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and we'll alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those online, please use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and *6 to mute and unmute. Seeing no hands in the room, we will go to Webex. And seeing no raised hands, I'll pass back to you. Chris, you're muted.
Thank you,
You're on
Zara.
mute, Chris. Okay.
Appreciate that. Of course, right at 4 o'clock. That brings us to item 14, adjourn. We are adjourned. Have a great weekend. See you next month. Our next meeting is on Friday, August 21st at 1 p.m. on Zoom and in Sacramento. We'll see you there. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.